My name is Stephen Smith. In the next 10 minutes you will hear my life story, a story of doing wrong things with wrong people. My roller coaster ride ended with that baseball bat smashing down on my head. Each blow lit like lightning, then nothing. As a child my parents ignored me and all I had was Violet, my old nanny, who read me Robin Hood every night. If my dad had played football with me, I'd have wanted to be a David Beckham, but me, I just wanted to grow up quick and rob the rich. In a fit of jealousy, my mother threw Violet out, and watching her taxi drive away, my nightmares began. I was victimised at school. Then a taller boy, Raymond, arrived and stopped the bullies. We became best friends, inseparable, going bowling to coffee bars, youth clubs. We went everywhere together. One night we went to Brighton, but late back Raymond's father banned us from seeing each other again. That bastard opened the gates of hell. I got drunk, cycled back and smashed his front window. Now I had no one. Like a wounded animal I went totally mad, snatched a woman's handbag but was chased and got caught. My father knew the magistrate and to save a family scandal bribed him to send me for medical reports. I was taken to an asylum where a perverted doctor led me down the long corridor to his room and molested me. But it got worse. He took me to Soho and in the Red Lion gave me the poison that ruined my life. My first bloody amphetamine pill. That was the beginning of 500,000 pills I was to take over the next 20 years. Next day I woke naked in his flat. He gave me another pill and 1 hour later I felt so happy, high as a kite. That morning we went rowing, but when the drug effect of that pill wore off, I wanted the happy feeling back. I was addicted to the buzz. Like a deranged junkie I pleaded for another pill, but the doctor refused and took me back to the asylum. Later, as that evil sod molested me, I stole 200 pills, crushed them and mixed the powder in the ward tea machine. The patients drank the tea, got stoned and wrecked the ward. To avoid a Jimmy Savile type scandal, the authorities released me and sent me home to my parents. Truanting from school, I went back to the Red Lion where I met Gentleman George, the legendary jewel thief. I begged him to teach me how to steal diamonds, and in the blink of an eye was on the rooftops climbing into a penthouse. Mesmerised, I watched as George opened the safe and filled his pockets with cash and diamonds. He gave me £100 and at home I flaunted the cash in front of my parents and ran away from them forever. For the next 3 years I was George's apprentice jewel thief. Savile Row suit, champagne lifestyle. On my 18th birthday he gave me a gold cigarette case, but now too old to be told what to do, I threw it back at him. In a billiard club I met Lenny Martin, who introduced me to the world of organised crime. He ran a construction company as a front for laundering money. Lenny's receptionist was Carmen, a stunning Maltese girl, but he also employed Cowley, a psychopathic lunatic. My first job with Cowley was hanging a man out the window to collect a debt for the craze. I was infatuated with Carmen and Lenny bet me £200 I couldn't get her into bed. I did, but instead of paying me, Lenny introduced me to Les, and I became the getaway driver on an audacious robbery. Balaclavas, shotguns, I was petrified, just 18 years old, but too stoned to realise what was really happening. I begged Carmen to marry me and we flew to visit her widowed mother and sisters who lived in Malta. Very poor, they all lived in one room, no fridge, no television, they had absolutely nothing. Carmen discovered she was pregnant and we got married, and before leaving Malta I bought her mother a luxury home. Back in England I bought us a beautiful flat overlooking Hampstead Heath, but the drugs got worse and at an all-night party out of my head I missed our daughter's birth. Robberies, suitcases of cash, Carmen had everything money could buy, but with my wild ways the marriage deteriorated. On Tanya's 5th birthday, the final straw, French drug dealers. Leave the party and I'll take the baby and lived in Malta, screamed Carmen. I did leave, and on that boat bought 100,000 amphetamine pills, filling 5 suitcases. With Carmen and Tanya in Malta, I was now on my own with enough pills to last me 100 years. I went back to the Red Lion where 2 gays were viciously hassling a city gent, Alec Beechenow. I stopped them and Alec offered me £5,000 to be his minder. I agreed, and the next day we dined on his private launch. At Alec's Mayfair home I met his 100-year-old mother, who took me to one side and warned me not to hurt her son. Alec was madly in love with me and had the power to write cheques for millions. I had London's leading banker at my mercy. Out of my head on pills, I told Lenny everything. In came the mafia to blackmail Alec to cash American stolen bonds. I phoned Carmen, who agreed if I bought her a house she'd come back and live in England. I bought a huge detached place and in the new garden built my daughter a doll's house. But a week later, instead of playing with Tanya, it was Les on the phone. Another bloody robbery. Carmen screaming over shades of new carpet, Tanya screaming Dad play with me, the mafia screaming for blackmail photos, and Les announcing the biggest ever wage snatch was now a week away. The phone rang. Carmen's mother had died, and with Carmen heavily pregnant, I flew alone to Malta to bring back those kids. I gave the mother a funeral fit for a queen. Arriving back with Carmen's sisters outside our house, the robbers were waiting. High as a kite I drove like never before, down one-way streets, losing the chasing police cars behind us. Driving up in the back of a removal van, then down to the coast, I'd earned 200,000, but I'd now missed the birth of our second daughter. Carmen went berserk. I locked myself in my study and, high on drugs, hallucinating, I heard God telling me to help the poor like Robin Hood did. Hours later I was running round Euston Station giving away bundles of cash to smiling tramps. Back home I told Carmen I was working for God. What, as a drugged up priest on night shift, she screamed. With the mafia threatening me, I went to Alec's country mansion. It was time to set him up for the blackmail photos. Alec's mother spoke to me alone by the lake. Whatever it is you're doing, don't do it. He loves you and true love is worth dying for. Her words sounded like my old Nanny Viola, and I decided whatever the mafia did, no blackmail. 40 years later, I still pray that in spite of everything, on that day of judgment down by the lake, I didn't let God down. At Ascot I met my past, Gentleman George, older, weaker and a bit shabby. We agreed to meet in London. George no longer living in the hotel penthouse, but was now in a scruffy basement room. He'd lost it all gambling and begged me to go on one last robbery. In sympathy, I reluctantly agreed. On the robbery, George stumbled to open the safe and I took over, and in tears he hugged me, saying, "Stevie boy, my star pupil, I missed you so much." He handed me back the cigarette case I'd thrown at him all those years ago. As we climbed down the drainpipe, George slipped and fell, and in my arms in the street below he died. Back home the mafia were waiting. They were losing patience and wanted the photos. They drove me to Alec's house. Alec's mother greeted me in the hallway and led me through to the back garden, where I escaped over the back wall. Paranoid now, I was like Hitler in his bunker, waiting for the end to come. I bought cash boxes, burying my stolen money in cemeteries. Outside my house a removal van was loading furniture. I hid inside the van to find where Carmen had gone. I found her later living with another man. Tanya was crying. She wanted to live with me, and with false references I rigged the case and won custody of an 11-year-old child. We lived in a poor area miles from our Totteridge home, but inevitably the drugs exploded and Tanya became my nurse. On Tanya's birthday party I passed out, and visiting parents alerted the authorities, who returned as a Carmen. With Tanya gone, I never left that flat for 6 months, surviving on tin food, taking drugs day and night. I was now totally mad, talking every day with 6-inch-high people, living in the air vent. One night I set fire to the building, reducing it to ashes, and later was found semi-conscious in a shop doorway. Voluntary welfare officers took me to a psycho unit where I was hosed down like a leper and given electric shock treatment, and with my memory wiped out, later I left the unit to live on the streets. In a charity soup queue I met Billy, a hardened drinker, who took me under his wing. We lived together in Cardboard City, where my neighbours were now winos huddled together at night in boxes. One night a gang of skinheads attacked, set fire to everything, and several tramps were killed. An ambulance took me to Phoenix House, a specialist rehabilitation hostel where I was admitted. After 5 years on the streets I just grunted, couldn't talk, and it took months before I spoke in therapy. But I did, and a year later was team leader. I was off drugs when disaster struck. I was arrested. Some busybody flying squad officer believed my living rough had been an act to avoid being arrested for a robbery. At Scotland Yard, photographs of the past brought back bits of my memory, and I changed from being a recovering addict to an arrogant know-it-all. Lenny Martin was shot dead and the case was dropped. Back at Phoenix House, the psychological damage was done, and I rejected the other recovering addicts as small-time idiots. I ran away, but when I couldn't find buried cash, I snatched a woman's bag, bought drugs, and was on the road to hell when destiny changed my life. A German student in London for 3 days crossed the King's Road, and I followed her. And in the Chelsea Potter we had a drink, played songs, and later fed the birds in Hyde Park. Sitting on a bench with my head on her shoulders, I fell asleep. I woke. She'd gone back to Munich, but had stuffed her address in my pocket. I was in love and threw my drugs in the lake, and later that day got admitted to a rehab. I wrote to Germany, and Honeylor replied, inviting me to Munich. Living in the rehab, I worked in a local factory and saved the airfare. I flew from Heathrow off drugs, so proud of myself, for the happiest 5 days of my life. I was in heaven. I had found what I'd looked for since Violet left, true love. Not from an aging gay city banker, but from a young, beautiful girl. It was like a fairy story. We made love, laughed, and went ice skating and explored Munich together. Honeylor and I were in love, and she, naively, not knowing my true situation, agreed to come and live in London. At the airport I sensed disaster, and on the plane, looking at a photo, I imagined her voice. Where shall we live? On a park bench or with Billy in a cardboard box? Panicking back in London, I went on a suicidal drug binge. Homeless again, queuing for a free bed outside the Salvation Army mission, a car screeched up and the driver stared. That night, in the mission dormitory, I paid the price that was long overdue. The mafia smashed my skull with a baseball bat. I regained consciousness in hospital, and a week or so later crept out and hitched a lift to Dover, where I sneaked on a ferry to Ostend, and with no ticket, hiding on trains, I miraculously reached the outskirts of Honeylor's village. I collapsed in a cowshed, and deep in my pockets found the last of my tablets. Half dead in the dark, I heard Violet saying, "You've found true love. Throw the drugs away and start living." This was my moment of clarity. I threw those tablets away. Next day I staggered to Honeylor's house. She rushed out. My long and winding road was over. I was home. I had a 10-hour microscopic operation to bring my skull back together. The surgeons were amazed I'd survived those blows. Honeylor and I got married, and our sons Oliver and Julian are grown up. 30 years later, I never took a drug again. My story has been read all over the world. Which little kids today are a few years away from a similar roller coaster hell ride like mine? Some are. When you steal millions, you steal peace of mind from yourself. corruption, multinational money laundering. It's all wrong, Mr. Cameron. Let's build a decent society. The legacy I leave is no drugs, no cheating, no stealing. After all, David Beckham didn't wind up tunnelling into Lloyd's at Baker Street, and he did all right.